Welcome to Scratchin and Survivin. This is your guide to winning your Survivor pool, brought to you by the Sharp app. Guys, if you're still here with me, that means you survived the chaos of week 9 and week 10, but it's not going to be easy the rest of the way. So strap yourself in. Let's get ready to go over week 11. Guys, week 11, hard to believe we are this far into the NFL season, but here's where we're at. Week 9 and week 10 were chaotic, as you all know. Your pools are now down to a pretty small amount of people, considering where you guys probably started at the beginning of the season. And if you're watching this, that very well means you are still alive in your pool, and you're probably super excited because now you could start to taste it. If you haven't even won, possibly some of you guys have won your pools already. I've seen some pools that have finished. But if you have not, you're getting real close to tasting victory. So I'm glad you're with me. We're going to hopefully help you get through some of the landmines that are always out there for us on the horizon and bring you home all that cash. But first, guys, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you can like the video, it's extremely helpful. You guys have been commenting on where you're at in your pools, looking for some advice, giving others advice, and I hugely appreciate that. We want to build that community, not just with Scratchin and Survivor, but the Sharp app as well. If you haven't downloaded the Sharp app, please do so. If you have any interest at all in sports and sports betting, Jacelyn is on the Sharp app now. You need to check out Jacelyn. She's awesome. Really, really smart, and she's going to be helping us out with the free pick of the day, and we've got some plans for Jacelyn in the future, maybe some other shows that she'll be doing on her own or with me. So check that out. Subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. Commenting helps us. And then share these videos. I know you don't want to share them with other participants in your pool. I get it. But if you know a buddy who's in another Survivor pool, send this on his way, or along their way, his way, her way. And it helps us out tremendously with the algorithm here at YouTube. All right, enough of that stuff. Let's just kind of get right into it. Now, I have people telling me about, point spread doesn't mean everything, and they're trying to handicap the games. I've had some arguments with people when it comes to point spread. I want to just bring up this graph that I made, or not a graph, but a graphic on win percentages. Now, this is since 2018, and because the small sample size on games where teams are favored by more than 14 points, we see that it's only 82.6%. Historically, this is going to be closer to 90%. But, if you get one or two games that win, we're going to, of course, jack that percentage up tremendously. But since 2018, teams have won at an 82.6% clip, favored by 14 or more. 10 to 13.5 is an 86.7% clip. 7 to 9.5 points, close to 80%. 3.5 to 6.5 points, 64%. Half a point to 3 points, 53.2%. Now, why do I show this to you? A couple of reasons. One, I want to show you guys that the point spread means everything, and that you need to be taking a look at the point spread, the win percentages, and look at who's favored by more. That's why you also need to pay attention to where the point spread moves throughout the week. Last week, Pittsburgh game was moving down before the Ben Roethlisberger news, the COVID news. So going into the game last week on Thursday night, Baltimore and Pittsburgh were actually identical in point spread, which should have alerted you to possibly play Baltimore. Now, Baltimore wound up losing the game, but I don't worry about that. I don't worry about results. I want to get us in the right position, right? I always talk about it. I like to talk about it in terms of poker because that's an inanimate object. The cards can't change, right? We look at football and sports in a different way than that, where we look at it, we don't look at it as a number. We just look like the game, whatever happens on that game on Sunday or Monday night or Thursday, as being what was inevitable to happen. It's really not the case. It's just a probability game. It's a statistical game. If Baltimore plays Miami, 10 times, they probably win that game 7 times, 7.5 times, something like that. We caught the game where Miami beats them. I know people just don't like to put that in their head, but look, if Baltimore play Miami again, they're still going to be a 7-point favorite. That's just the way it is. So anyway, I want you to get those numbers down in your head and realize that the point spread is everything, and look at the point spreads, follow the point spreads throughout the week. When I do this on a Wednesday, it may be drastically different by the time we get to Sunday. Now, let me just bring that same graphic up again so you get a picture in your head. I want to flip to when a road team is favored by the same amount of points, because some of you tend to shy away from taking a road team when they're a big favorite. Well, the numbers don't change all that much. As a matter of fact, in some instances, the road team has won more games as a similar favorite than the team either be home or road. And of course, if they won more on the road than the average, that means they've won a lot more than home teams have in that same spot. But we have a small sample size again with 14 points. It's 9-2, 82%. Again, that number will jump up. We get 1 or 2 wins by a road team that's favored by 14 points. That number is going to get closer to 90%. 20-5, 80% for teams 10 to 13.5. Again, small sample. 7 to 9.5, 58 and 12, about 83%. We're looking here, favorite from 3.5 to 6.5 on the road, 67.8%. That's more than home teams are winning as a favorite in that same situation. And then just about the same, half point to 3 points, 186, 53.8%, 54%, let's call it, on those numbers. So when we look at the numbers on the whole, you could see it's pretty similar. The difference is really more about sample size than anything else. So what I want to get across to you is, don't worry about if a team's on a road. Don't worry if it's a divisional matchup. Don't worry about all of these things. It's a rivalry game. It doesn't matter. I could have done the same graphic for divisional games and it wouldn't matter. They win at the same clip as games do on the whole at that point spread. That's the whole point of the point spread. The point spread's taking all of the information in from all places and coming up with that spread. It's the ultimate wisdom of the crowd. If you've never read the book Wisdom of the Crowds, I highly suggest it. But in sports, when you have a large number of people betting and putting money on a sport, and the NFL, nothing garners more bets than the NFL does, you're going to have a very solid line. So those of you who are trying to beat the line somehow and be smarter than the line, well, I'm going to take an underdog because I don't think this favorite deserves to be a favorite. I'm going to take an underdog in a survivor pool. You are out of your mind, and you should not be doing that. So I just want to get that across. Use the point spreads. Don't try to outthink it. And as I've shown throughout the course of this season, you can get high leverage situations with big favorites without having to go off the rails and take a weak team. Now, in future weeks, we may have to take some of those weak teams, but that's when we're forced to do it, we're forced to do it. And when we're forced to do it, most of the other participants in the pool are forced to do it. We're not putting ourselves at as big a disadvantage as in week 4, taking a team that's only a 3-point favorite when there's so many other options out there. All right, let's jump into the grid and look at what we're seeing here for this week. Tampa, the best option on the board, at least from a point spread standpoint. A lot of you are not going to be able to take Tampa. If you're in a small pool, you need to look at whether or not you can take Tampa in that pool and others can't. If that's the case, you need to jump on it. Let me just tell you what happened with my brother last week in a pool he's in. 3 people left. He actually switched. He was going to take Pittsburgh. He switched to Baltimore, which really was the right play, especially, I mean, we didn't know that Ben was going to be out with the COVID, but it was the right play. Both lines were at 8. When he looked at it, he had a chance to win the pool taking Baltimore. Someone else could have taken Pittsburgh. So he passed on Pittsburgh, took Baltimore. They were basically the same line at that point. They lose. So he's out of the pool unless everyone else loses. One of the other participants took a team that I'm forgetting now who he took, but they lost. And then someone else could have taken Buffalo, which was the highest point spread on the board, could have taken Buffalo and was the only one who could take Buffalo, and passed on it and took Arizona. When I actually texted him and asked him why he did that, he did it because he was upset. The previous week, he was in another pool for a lot of money, $180,000 pot. He was in it with a partner. His partner convinced him to take Buffalo. They lost the game to Jacksonville, and he was still upset about that and didn't want to take Buffalo against the Jets last week. So idiotic. Could have won the pool and did not. Now all three of them lose, so all three get to advance to this week, and they continue as if they all won. So really, there's a lot of people out there who think that way. They go into fantasy football and they won't take a player because the player was bad for them the year before, and they don't want to take that player even if they're getting good value. It makes no sense to me. We see it in DFS nightly. A guy has a bad night. I don't want to take him this week, or I don't want to take him tomorrow because he screwed me 2 days ago, cost me $100, whatever the case is. Guys, you need a really, really short memory when it comes to sports betting, and you need to get yourself in the mind frame of every day is a new day. You can't harp on the past. We could look at it, try to learn from it, but we can't make it change our decisions, especially when they don't make any sense. So let's jump back into Survivor Grid and take a look. So now, like I said, Tampa, a lot of you are not going to be able to take. You're seeing them taken in 10% of pools. That's probably about the percentage of people who have them left. After this week, it's going to be virtually no one has Tampa left. So see where you're at in your pool. If you're in a large pool, there's probably going to be better options. I think there's just better options in general than Tampa, unless, again, you're in a small pool, you have a shot to take it all down, and you're the only one or one of a couple of people who have Tampa, then absolutely fire away at Tampa. Tennessee, you see 48% of pools on Tennessee because not many people have taken Tennessee. I actually burned Tennessee last week in a double pick pool because a lot of the double picks were losers last week, and the one that I actually survived on was a Dallas-Tennessee double pick. We're down to about 60 people in that pool. Starting from 6,400, I've got one entry left. So in that pool, I can't take Tennessee. But most people are going to have Tennessee left. They played a really tough schedule, have not been a lot of chances to take them. Here's the best shot now at taking Tennessee. Now I'm going to get back to Tennessee in a second because we're going to talk about Cleveland. Now Cleveland is right there with Tennessee in point spread, 10.5 points. Cleveland, now some of you may have taken Cleveland. I know in a bunch of mine I've taken Cleveland before earlier in the season. I think the one that I do have left here on that double pick, I have not taken Cleveland, so I can take them, which I think is an advantage. If you have Cleveland and Tennessee left, if your options are between those two, I almost have to take Cleveland because look at the leverage I'm getting. More than twice as many people are going to be on Tennessee. I've got more future value with Tennessee. We've got the Jacksonville game coming up in a few weeks. So if I'm in a large pool where I'm almost guaranteed to get to week 14, I'm going to probably want to save Tennessee. We look at Cleveland, at Baltimore, bye, home for Baltimore, home for Vegas, at Green Bay, at Pittsburgh, home for Cincinnati. I mean, you're not jumping on any of those games. You're not saving Cleveland for anything. So if you have Cleveland and you don't take them this week, you're probably not going to take them for the rest of the season. So that's really has to be pushing you towards Cleveland. Will Cleveland win? We know Detroit played well last week, but that was a very sloppy game. No Roethlisberger. Now, we don't know the quarterback situation yet for Cleveland. Is Mayfield going to play? That could be a good thing or a bad thing. I think people in Cleveland are getting a little tired of Mayfield also. So we'll see about that. But the Cleveland team on the whole should be able to run the ball against Detroit. Again, it's a 10-point favorite. I'm not trying to handicap this game. We're just looking at the numbers. Cleveland looks like a play you need to make in most pools. Buffalo, almost nobody has Buffalo left, right? If you somehow have Buffalo left, I don't know if this is necessarily the best spot because you probably have one of these other teams left. Again, it's hard to know. There might be some wacky pool out there that you are in that you have, that you've taken Cleveland, Tennessee, and Tampa Bay already, and Buffalo would be your best option, but highly, highly unlikely. But we see Buffalo is going to have some future value as well, but more than likely, no one's going to have Buffalo as you're seeing here because they've taken them. New England playing really well at Atlanta this week, -7. Again, guys, don't be afraid because it's on the road. If it's -7, it's -7. As I've shown you, a -7 anywhere on the planet is the same. Okay, New England. That all this means is New England would be a bigger favorite if it was home, probably about 8.5. Home field advantage is about 8.5 these days. I'm sorry, about 1.5. So the days of home field being a 3-point edge no longer exist. If you want to know why that is, no one talks about this. But the reason home field advantage has dropped in every single sport there's one explanation, that is replay. Home field advantage is not about sleeping in your own bed. It's not about travel. It's not about the fan noise, although it is about the fan noise indirectly. The fans can have an influence over the officiating. And what they've proven is the closer to the action the fans are, the more influence they have. So basketball's historically had the highest home field advantage where baseball has not. Baseball has a strategic advantage in batting last, yet very little home field advantage in baseball, much larger in the NBA. And then the NFL has had about a 3-point advantage for home teams. Historically, that has dropped dramatically. Right now, I think it's close to 1, but in my numbers, I've been putting in about 1.5, 1 point. I think I actually said 1.25 was going to be the number this year. That was my prediction because they've actually gotten better with the replay where you don't even have to challenge certain plays they call down. So the more they add in replay and technology into sports, lower your expectations for home teams. Just a little bit of advice there for you guys. Back to the grid. And the week is, I mean, it's really, I hate to say it's easy because it's certainly never easy to advance, but I think your selections are going to be a lot easier because you're going to be limited. San Francisco's another team you possibly have, right? And I have to take San Francisco in that pool on my double picks because that's all I have really of these teams. San Francisco and San Francisco and Cleveland are the only teams I really have left that are up in this upper echelons of teams. At Jacksonville, 6-point favorite. Do I love the game? No. Of course I don't love the game. It's 6 points. I would have loved to have, these other teams at a 10 or an 11-point favorite, 2 of those, but it is what it is. I mentioned to you last week, if you multiply the numbers, let's just say this is 80% and 70%, multiply them together, that's the probability if you have a double pick that both of those picks advance. So let's just say Cleveland. I'm taking, who did I say I have? I have Cleveland this week with San Francisco. Let's just call this 80% and let's call this 70%. I would have about a 56% chance of advancing. That would be the same as Kansas City beating Dallas. Okay? So you have to look at it that way. That's why it's really hard with the double picks. Now I just want to look ahead to week 12 because this is the week of death. And it's changed so much because look at Tampa. We thought Tampa would be the second best choice. Some people were saving Tampa for this week. Now, if you're one of those people who saved Tampa for this week, you may want to just go ahead and fire at them. Or if you save Tampa for next week, I should say, you might want to just fire at Tampa this week and take them against the Giants because now this game is not looking nearly as good. Tampa losing at Washington last week, only going to be a 3-point spread. Saving Tampa may not be the optimal play at this point if you have the ability to do that. Baltimore, Cleveland, 5.5-point spread. Are you going to love it? No. Buffalo at New Orleans, you're not going to love that game. None of these. Cincinnati, home for Pittsburgh. Seattle at Washington. You're not jumping for joy with any of them, but guess what? We're going to have to play one of them. Now, we're going to have an opportunity probably to take a team that we only need that week, and we're just going to have to cross our fingers and hope they advance. But for those of you in smaller pools, hopefully you can get by this week with one of these teams and not have to even worry about week 12. Hopefully you can win it. But for those of us in larger pools, more than likely, we will see week 12 if we can get past week 11, and that's going to be a bit of a crapshoot on what we're going to take. But we'll see. We'll take that one as it comes. What you're learning here is saving teams too far into the future can be detrimental. As it is, especially with COVID, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know that Roethlisberger was going to be out last week until the day of the game. So things like that can creep up in this day and age. And even if it's not COVID, we just don't know. Injury during the week, during practice, anything can happen, and it totally can change just that week, let alone when we're planning 3, 4, 5 weeks out. So I do like to err on the side of taking the better team in the now as opposed to waiting in the future. But when you're in a large pool, again, you have to take more and more risk. You have to be willing to push some of that risk out into the future because it's a large pool, right? We can't always take the best team, unfortunately, each and every week because that's just not going to get it done. We need to look out to the future and see how can we plan this out to give ourselves the best possibility. And when sometimes an injury occurs, that's just going to be part of the game. These are really difficult to win. So I think this week a little bit clearer. We're going to be looking at Cleveland if you have them available in a large pool or a small pool. And this is if you don't have Tampa. So I'd really, really look at Cleveland as a play. If you've taken Cleveland already, you probably haven't taken Tennessee, and that's where most of the people are getting on Tennessee. I just hate to have to take a team that half of the pool is going to be taken. If there's 200 people in the pool and 100 of them are on Tennessee, I've got one entry. Boy, I would really like to get a team that is close to Tennessee, like a Cleveland, certainly Tampa if I had that ability. But yeah, not many other options. You're probably taking the Patriots. Good chance of taking the Patriots. Good chance of taking Baltimore. But if my option is between Cleveland and Tennessee, I don't think I know. Cleveland's the way you're going to have to go because both teams have the similar likelihood of losing. Now, again, follow the point spread. If that Cleveland line drops a lot, Tennessee line goes up, we may have to change our opinion. We may just have to jump on board with Tennessee and just be on the same side as everybody else, and then hope next week that we can find the right toss-up game and advance. So it's going to be difficult from this point out. Hopefully you guys have some good ideas. I really appreciate your comments. So I love reading them. I love thinking about your particular pool. Helps me out in my pools for sure. And I love the fact that you guys are commenting on each other's pools. I think we can all learn a little bit from that. So download the Sharp app, subscribe to this channel, like the videos, share them, all the good stuff. Helps us with the algorithm. We appreciate it. And hopefully I will see you guys for Thanksgiving week next week here on Scratchin' and Survivin'.